Hey guys, Buffett Game Bat today, bringing another video for our weapon conversion series. Today we're going to be converting the M14 or the DMR-14 in Call of Duty Cold War, Black Ops Cold War into the M1A. So if you're not familiar with the M1A, we did do a conversion for Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and now we're going to do it here in Cold War. So let's go ahead and jump right into it here. We're going to go ahead, I will remove all of the attachments from this weapon, as well as go with the deselect the camouflage here. And we'll just start out with the base DMR-14 or the M14. Now, if we go ahead and look at this weapon, we're going to start out with the optic. We're going to go ahead and do the Hangman RF. So this is going to give you a 6 times, an American 6 times magnification optic here. Essentially a sniper scope for this DMR, designated marksman rifle. We'll go ahead and select that. It's going to improve our accuracy pretty significantly. You can see there in the bar chart down at the bottom. Now for the muzzle, this is going to be more so personal preference. The typical M1As and the M14s come with a muzzle brake at base because they fire a 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO round. It's a heavy round. It's going to kick pretty heavily. So I'm going to go with a muzzle attachment that's going to help mitigate that. So what we're going to do here is go with the SOCOM Eliminator. This is going to conceal our muzzle flash by 85% as well as decrease the vertical recoil by 17%. The cons here is the shooting movement speed as well as a horizontal recoil will be increased here by 10%. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. Definitely some options you can do to mitigate that with underbarrel attachments. However, with this build, we're not going to be doing that. You also have an agency suppressor and a regular silencer that's available with this, which is actually really neat and fun to use in my opinion. But to stay true to IRL, we're going to run a SOCOM Eliminator on this. Now for the barrel, again, personal preference for this one, I'm going to run the 20.8 inch match grade barrel. This is going to increase our effective damage range by 100%. The cons are 5% decrease to this sprinting movement speed. However, there's one other option here. I'm going with this one just for personal preference, as I said, but there's a better option depending on what you want, how you want to play. This is mainly a cosmetic choice I'm doing with the bipod that you have there. Because you see, this is the only cosmetic barrel that has the bipod folded up, which I think looks pretty neat. It's really reminiscent of the old M14s and the M1As. Now with the task force, though, you're going to get an increase to your damage by 24%. As well as you're going to keep that effective damage rate increased by 100%, which is the same that you see with the match grade. However, you're also going to get an increase of 50% to your bullet velocity, which is really nice to see. The cons here are the vertical recoil control and the horizontal recoil control. You're going to get those increased by 20% and 15% respectively. So you're really going to have to, if you're using this barrel, is make sure you're attaching underbarrel attachments to mitigate that recoil. So if we look at the body for this, we're going to skip out on this. This is really just lasers and flashlights, which we don't need, since we're using this as it's intended to be used as a DMR or a designated marksman rifle. Underbarrel attachments, again, we're going to skip on this. It's not really a test anything. It looks a little goofy on this weapon, in my opinion. But again, just personal preference here. You can see if you are going to run that task force barrel, though, you're going to probably want something like the field agent foregrip. That'll assist with that vertical and horizontal recoil pretty significantly and help balance that out. So that's definitely an option if you're going to run that task force barrel for the increased damage as well as the bullet velocity on this weapon. Now the magazine, we're going to leave it with the base 20 round magazine. However, you do have a round for an option for a 30 round magazine of the 7.62 by 51. So that's an option, as well as you have a jungle mag style, which I believe is just the base 20 round of the M1A mags. Then you have a 35 round magazine option here, which is pretty crazy. It's going to be interesting to see if these 30 and 35 round magazines are integrated into Warzone. I'm not sure what attachments are coming and what isn't, but this would be pretty insane. A lot of firepower from a 7.62 by 51 millimeter weapon that can be really built for a ranged engagements in Warzone. That'll be very interesting to see what they bring over and what they don't bring over. Now for the handle here, I'm going to go with the Serpent Ramp. This, again, just personal preference. You don't need this attachment. This is going to assist with the ADS speed a little bit. Since we have a big, bulky, heavy 7.62 by 51 millimeter weapon, we're going to want something to assist with the ADS speed in my personal playstyle. The cons are going to be the sprint to fire time is going to be decreased by 10%. So we'll go ahead and select that. And then the final attachment here, you can see, if we have the base stock, you can see this is still essentially very similar to an M14 build. And you can even call this an M1A based on the different chassis that you wanted to put on this. However, with this one, and you remember this from Modern Warfare, we're going to go with the Raider stock. This is going to give us the pros of the sprint to fire speed by 30% and the aim, walk, and movement speed increased by 40%. The cons are just the hip fire accuracy, but we're not hip firing this weapon because it is a DMR, so we want to really be doing range engagement. So you can see the differences between something like the SAS combat stock here which is really still just the base chassis of the weapon with a balance pack on the back versus the Raider stock. So you can see it gives us something similar to that Archangel stock that we covered, or chassis that we covered in Modern Warfare when we did the conversion to the M1A. Very similar. I think it looks really nice. Now, one option here, if you wanted a really old school looking M14, you can go with the duster pad here. This is just all a wood chassis. However, it looks a little odd because you don't have the whole thing isn't really wood, but I think it actually fits pretty close to in line if we select it. It really matches up actually very well with the real M14. So that's, again, personal preference, but we're going to go with the Raider stock for this for the M1A. We'll go ahead and select that. And then for our appearance, we're going to go with the camo. On this one, I will not run out of camo in the gameplay, but I'm going to put this on after the fact. I think something like a classic woodland here. Some of these options just look really nice on this. It'll cover that chassis, the lower chassis of the weapon here. We'll go ahead and go back, and there it is. That's our M1A from Springfield Armory. So let's go ahead now. You can see compared to like the base M14, much different than when we started. It looks really nice, and honestly, it looks very tactical and almost more modernized because it is an M1A. It was produced later than the M14, which is really nice. So let's go ahead now. We'll jump into the gameplay for this weapon. Now you'll see me just using this in a multiplayer match here, mainly just against bots, just to try and show off the weapon and how it handles. I'm testing out the headshot, kill damage on this, really to see what the damage is with headshots. And it looks like it's going to be a 2 to 3 shot headshot depending on the range here. You'll see I'll slow down and just really aim and take my time with those shots, depending on the ranges here, the beginning and later part of the video. And it appears to be a 2 to 3 shot headshot. However, if you're running the task force barrel, which is that last barrel attachment you get for this, you're going to get that increase to damage by 24% as well as the bullet velocity. So I think that may increase your chances to get a one-shot headshot, perhaps. I haven't tested it yet, but definitely an option with that. So if we look at just really how it handles in game, I think the damage is almost, I won't want to say underwhelming, but it definitely, you can see if you're going with body shots, it doesn't really hit as hard as you would expect a 7.62 by 51mm nature cartridge to hit. It also sounds a little weak, in my opinion, versus something like in Modern Warfare. It sounds heavy. This is a large weapon. It's firing a very large caliber round. It should be very impactful when you fire it, and especially when it impacts, it's really going to destroy anything it hits in real life. But I think in game the damage is a little bit underwhelming, but the good thing is that you can get follow-up shots on target. You'll see some instances here. I'm going to tap fire relatively fast, and I'm able to get shots on target very quickly. And with the recoil patterns for this, you'll notice because we have some of the options on this weapon with the barrel attachment, we're going to get some of that horizontal recoil on this. But you can see with the testing of the recoil, it's really not that big of a deal. And if you're controlling the recoil, you can mitigate it pretty well if you're actually trying to aim. You'll notice that in game, if you just wait a fraction of a second between shots, you're able to get those shots on target and land those headshots, which are crucial for this weapon. And then if you're within a certain range, you can really just tap for this as fast as you can and get those kills. So let me know what you guys think of this weapon. If you run this in Cold War yet, what are your favorite attachments to run on this, and what do you think of this weapon overall? Is it underwhelming in damage, or do you think it's right where it needs to be for this game? Now, if we look at the Springfield Armory M1A in real life, if you're not familiar, this is a civilian version of the M14. So the M14, we've seen this in a lot of Call of Duty games before. Also, this has been in service since 1959. And the M1A is the civilian version of the M14. It was designed by Springfield Armory beginning of 1974, and it's been in service and available since 1974 all the way through the present day. So the term M1A is proprietary title for Springfield Armory's M14 pattern of rifles. The early M1A was built with surplus GI parts from the M14s, but again, it's just a civilianized version by Springfield Armory, developed in 1974 through present. A unit cost by this, if you look at Springfield's website, it's going to be around $2,000, but again, that's dependent on the version. There's a lot of different versions of this weapon, being just a standard national match, a SOCOM 16, a SOCOM 2, an M21, M25. So there's a bunch of different variations of this rifle that's available on Springfield Armory's website. And if you're a Tarkov player, you're very familiar with this weapon. This is a great and fun weapon to run in Tarkov, especially when you can fully kit it out with a lot of different attachments and changes. It's really a fun weapon to use. So here in real life, the production took place in 1974 through present. As I mentioned, the mass overall is going to be 7.8 pounds through 11.6 pounds, and that's going to be unloaded with an empty magazine. The length overall is going to be 37.25 through 44.33 inches. And the barrel length is going to be anywhere from 16 to 22 inches. So your weight as well as your length is going to be dependent on which barrel you're running on this. Again, they are available anywhere from 16 inches to 22 inches. Now, if you were looking at something like I mentioned the SOCOM 16 and the SOCOM 2s, the barrel lengths for those are going to be right at the 16-inch mark. So those are the shortest barrel options you can get on this, which will obviously decrease the length overall. Now, the cartridge that this fires at base and here in game is a 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO round. It also is capable of firing the .308 Winchester round, and more recently the 6.5 millimeter Creedmoor. If you're not familiar with that round, essentially the U.S. military has a bid to kind of find an intermediary round to replace 5.56, so something between 5.56 and 7.62, and they came up with the 6.5 Creedmoor round, which is supposed to be, like I said, that intermediary round, mainly because of the lack of stopping power of a 5.56 caliber rifle. So they're coming up with the 6.5s. That's a more modernized version, obviously available from Springfield, that fires that round. The action for this rifle is going to be a gas-operated rotating bolt, and the rate of fire is going to be semi-automatic. And here in game, I don't really notice a fire cap, so it seems to be almost as fast as you can fire the weapon or pull the trigger here. In game, it'll shoot. The feed system in real life is going to be anywhere from 5, 10, or 20 rounds attached with a box magazine. However, in game here, we have a 30 and a 35-inch round barrel, or excuse me, a 30 or a 35 round magazine, which is not available in real life to my knowledge. And then for sights, obviously there's different attachments to hook up the sights on this weapon. So that's really it for this weapon. Again, very minor differences between the M14 and the M1A. Really nice rifle overall. We did the conversion in Modern Warfare, and I really enjoy using it, especially in multiplayer in Modern Warfare. I think the thing just puts people down so quick. One of the more underrated weapons there. It's even pretty effective in Warzone, so I'm really interested to see how this weapon translates into Warzone with all the different attachments, what attachments they're going to bring in, and how it compares to the Modern Warfare version. So let me know down below what you guys think of this. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, be sure to do so and like the video. Stay tuned for more content. We have a lot more weapon conversions coming for Warzone and Cold War, as well as Modern Warfare. We also have the favorite weapon series, tactical builds, a lot of stuff coming here for the Warzone weapons. And we're going to be covering both games, being Modern Warfare, Warzone, as well as Cold War. So let me know down below what you guys think of this weapon overall, what you think of Cold War. And until next time, I'll leave you guys with the gameplay. This is the Springfield Armory M1A. Buffner Gaming. Out.